Well, I thought something else was going to run, but that's fine. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Ellen Jimerson.
And I'm Jonni Skinner.
And we have Darla in the control booth, without whom we could not function. It's been such a blessing to have her. And we have an incredible guest today. We have the very own mother of our very own Jonni, whose name is Melissa Skinner, and people are getting so excited that she's coming on the show and are making plans to drop by and say howdy and maybe ask a question or so. Melissa is unusual in that she's the mother of someone who transitioned and consented to it, but like Jonni and so many others, she fell prey to really bad advice. Hold on, let's see if it's Darla. Okay. Oh, okay. You're good, Darla. It's all good. Okay. And so she's unusual in that she's one of the very few parents who is actually willing to talk about her story. And it sometimes costs her, because people will say anything they can think of to say. But on the other hand, there are people like me and Beth Bourne, who is a friend of our show and was on with us, I think, last week. It's just amazing that she does tell this very difficult story. We're going to get back to that. But first, we are going to have our segment. Darla, maybe I should do it while you gather your thoughts. We're all learning our way around. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes getting y'all updated on what's been happening in the gender. So first of all, what is happening in Sweden? Sorry, distracted again. Yes, I'm glad you're laughing, Jonni. I'm starting to feel like an idiot. But Agnes Wold is a professor of bacteriology and an activist on issues surrounding gender dysphoria. In the latest episode of the Swedish podcast Hotspot, she expressed her concern over the new law in Sweden supporting medicalization of children. She is strongly critical of the fact that Sweden seems to completely ignore all research studies with high validity, meaning other professionals agree that they're good, it's good research, good data, which show an increase in mental illness after undergoing medical treatment. The fact that the medical treatment lacks evidence and that the children and young people are still being treated with puberty blockers in violation of the recommendations of the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare did not seem to upset people at Hotspot as much as the fact that someone dares to point it out. A journalist employed in Swedish public service has stated that it is time, and this is just what a beautiful thing for a journalist to say, it is time to unmic the old hag. Unmic means to silence someone. This statement is not only sexist and ageist. Wold is 71 years old, making her younger than I am, but it violates freedom of expression. Wanting to silence critical voices is a blow against the very pillars on which democracy stands. This has taken on such large proportions that it was covered on Aktuellt, Sweden's largest news program. During the broadcast, the Swedish public service announced that Agnes is no longer allowed to speak out on these issues. There's a law. On the other hand, and this is Sweden, y'all, where people act like they have good sense. On the other hand, the internet seems to support Agnes wholeheartedly, and the storm is changing direction and a massive show of support for her. Second, Callie Keeler and Stephanie Brown have filed a lawsuit against the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. And Darla, we've got a still there of Callie wrestling, if you can find it and put it up there. On December the 6th, 2025, Callie Keeler, who was then a 15-year-old girl, competed in a Washington Interscholastic Athletic Association sponsored girls wrestling tournament. There's a picture of her. Okay, it's all right. But unknown, there you go. She's on the bottom and he is on the top. It was unknown to her and to her mother, but it was known to the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association and to school officials that one of the wrestlers she was facing was a male. Had Callie and her mother known that, Callie would not have taken the mat. But because she didn't know, she wrestled. And during the match, the male athlete is alleged to have sexually assaulted Callie, shoving his fingers through her spandex clothing, digitally penetrating her vagina, and holding the position for several seconds. Visibly distressed, Callie shouted to her mother, who was video recording the match, that her opponent's fingers are in my C something, 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 HIE, which I'm afraid to say because it's YouTube. And if you can find that short video, Darla, we can run it and we can see what was captured on video. To stop it, Callie says that she allowed the male wrestler to pin her. Shortly afterward, she found out the athlete was male and said she felt violated all over again. Callie's mother informed Callie's coaches in writing of the alleged assault and the unfairness of wrestling a male. She even gave them a video of the match, but nothing happened. Despite mandatory reporter laws, officials ignored the incident until it became a national news story weeks later. Even now, they seem to refuse to take it seriously, to deal with the assault, to reserve girls' sports for girls, or even to give parents the necessary notice so they can keep their daughters safe. Callie and her mother are bringing this action to hold the Scholastic Association, the state and school officials responsible for their refusal to protect girls and to ensure that they restore common sense to girls' athletics. I'm going to see if I can find that real short clip. Here we go. And you can, doesn't seem to be running.
Oh, but
there we go. You can see it if you look closely where his arm and his hand are. Of course, and you can see the expression on her face. Of course, I want to point out that everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And I want to point out that video is not the reliable source we sometimes think it is. Nonetheless, the fact that she was wrestling a male and the officials knew but didn't tell her or her mother disturbs me, whatever happened on the mat. Third, a judge has blocked an Idaho law criminalizing transgender people's bathroom access. Today, a federal judge granted a request for a preliminary injunction blocking enforcement of HB 752, a new state law threatening transgender people with up to 5 years in prison for using public restrooms consistent with their gender identity. HB 752 was set to go into effect on July 1, and today's order limits enforcement of the law to protect access to some restrooms while the case challenging it proceeds. This ruling, according to Paul Carlos Southwick of the ACLU of Idaho, and he is the legal director, he said, this ruling means trans folks in Idaho can continue participating in public life without the threat of being arrested for using the bathroom. And of course, we have a different take on that. Nonetheless, this is what's happening in the news. This decision proves significant protections for transgender people in Idaho from the efforts of state politicians to force them out of public life altogether, said Barbara Schwabauer, senior staff attorney for the ACLU's LGBTQ and HIV project. HB 752, signed into law by Idaho Governor Brad Little earlier this year, prohibits transgender people in Idaho from using sex-designated public restrooms consistent with their gender identity in government-owned buildings and private businesses that are open to the public. The law makes the first offense a misdemeanor with up to 1 year in prison, and a second offense a felony with up to 5 years in prison. It applies to all government-owned buildings and private businesses that are open to the public, such as libraries, rest stops, malls, gas stations, restaurants, entertainment venues, hospitals, and other businesses. In April 2026, 6 transgender residents of Idaho filed a lawsuit in federal court challenging HB 752, arguing the law violates their constitutional rights to due process, equal protection, and privacy. The Idaho Fraternal Order of Police and the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association opposed HB 752, noting there is no clear or reasonable way to determine a person's sex at birth during a field contact without engaging in invasive and inappropriate questioning or searches. And that is the end of gender news for this week, although I think there have been other things going on, but that's what I read about and found out about. So we could talk a long time about that last one. Well, all of them, really. It's just mind-boggling what's going on in the world. So thank God for Jonni and Jen Specht and Melissa and Beth.
I mean, we're trying.
Yeah.
We're trying to find some sense in the world and trying to do what's best for everyone. It's just gotten really complicated out there.
It has gotten complicated out there. And as I mentioned too, well, let's bring Melissa on.
Yeah.
And there she is, the fair Melissa. If you can switch it around, Darla, poor Darla, she got her days mixed up, and I can sympathize because
Same.
it's been quite a week for me. and I've been quite distracted. And anyway, we're so glad Melissa's here, and brava, as they say, or bravo, for being who you are and for stepping up to the plate and doing the best you could as a parent. And it's not easy when the doctors are telling you something and counselors are telling you things, and you have no way of knowing that it's not
what the
true.
truth is. Right.
So what the truth is. So we welcome you, and we are so glad you're here and look forward very much to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I'd like to address some of the news. Holy cow. That young lady that was wrestling, that's awful. There has to be people in the crowd there that seen that happen. That's sexual assault.
If it happened, it definitely is sexual assault.
Yeah.
And
the video, I agree with you. Video doesn't say. I think it can be very misleading.
It can be very misleading.
But it looked like she was saying that was happening. There are people all the way around. Somebody had to have seen it, and they need to own it.
Well, and then she files a complaint, and the coaches and the school officials and all of those people are mandated court reporters, which means they have agreed somehow and have a legal obligation to follow through with it. And that's a problem. With or without the video, that is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, anytime there's a complaint, even if it was two girls or two guys, if there is ever a complaint, the first thing the school should do is get involved.
Yes. And we know that the schools are either not getting involved or they're getting involved in a way that is quite harmful to children.
Yeah, and a lot of them are.
Darla did put up the picture of her earlier on, and you can see she was a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
15.
Yeah.
15. Yeah.
A lot of these young people are getting really hurt by this, young ladies. So this is a really polarizing subject for me because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
I'm a very independent woman, and I have a really hard time with a lot of this sharing spaces. But I was also the parent of a trans child.
Right.
Okay. And the amount of bullying they get is uncalled for from both adults, from teachers, from peers, from social media, from everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not okay. And bathrooms are not always safe spaces for kids. I wanted Johnny to be able to use the nurse's bathroom because he was uncomfortable upsetting his friends, right? So his girlfriends that were in school, they never really said anything to him, and I really think they would protect him, but he didn't want them to be uncomfortable. But going into a guy's bathroom is very uncomfortable because they aren't the nicest, right? If they see a trans kid come into the bathroom. And that's just kids. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's just kids because it's adults too. But they're grown and they should know better. You know,
good.
And when you get in grown situations, it's even more unsafe. So people on both sides may not like what I have to say, but I really think there should be neutral bathrooms everywhere now, bathrooms with just door locks.
Yeah.
And not because it should go back one way or the other, not because I side with one or the other, but because we let it get out of control. And now we have thousands of these kids. And whether you're siding with them on, every transition should happen, or you're on the side of this should never have happened. It's too late. it happened and we got to make accommodations for them.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know the answer, but I know bullying each other back and forth and hurting kids more is not the solution.
No. Well, the whole issue, as you said, I mean,
It's a conundrum, right?
and other people have worked so hard to get privacy, to get private spaces, to get.
Women have fought for it for 50 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
It's crazy how many women.
We fight for equal pay. We fight for spaces. We fight for independence. I mean, I remember being a kid, which you probably remember more than me because I was a child. It was more my mom. But to get a divorce and try to get a bank account.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that's all.
That. Yeah.
You know, that's all in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand this. They all get our spaces.
It's just the power of a narrative. And
well,
go ahead, Johnny.
I was about to say, I would love to jump in on there real quick because, like, you remember from raising me, Mom, that I was not comfortable in female spaces. It went deeper than just like, well, I don't want to make my friends uncomfortable. That was certainly a part of it, but it was also, it didn't help my dysphoria. If your dysphoria is centered around being male, why would I feel more comfortable being in a space where that's even more apparent? You know what I mean?
Right.
It never made sense to me. And you remember when I was going to high school trying to help me fight for accommodations for me to use the nurse's restroom.
Yep.
Because then I'm not getting bullied, I'm not making other people uncomfortable, and I'm not making myself more uncomfortable.
Yep, and the school wanted him using the girls' bathroom.
Yes. Which I think is why it's important for us to have these nuanced conversations, because you're right, there are thousands of kids that now this happened to, and they're being pushed towards these using these opposite sex spaces when, you know, you and I know, of course, from our experience that, yeah, that's not the healthy thing to do. Yet for some reason, this is where the culture is pushing them. And we can, you know, get more into that as we get into the conversation. But yeah, I totally stand with you guys. I'm just mortified by where our culture has gone, and I'm not sure where we can go from here other than just barring people out of these spaces and then figuring out accommodations from there. That's my personal view, just because, you know, you're right. Like, I remember listening to Granny growing up talking about how she fought for her own space, and now that's pretty well null and void. And of course, because I come at this from the trans kid experience, I also have sympathy, not for everyone, because, you know, some people are doing very awful things, as we had heard in the news with that wrestling match. But, you know, a lot of these kids don't know any better, and they're being pushed into these situations. And then it's like, well, what do you do at that point? You know what I mean? There's a huge amount of the sunk cost fallacy where it's, I've already gone into the, you know, I'm sure a lot of these people think I've already gone into these spaces. I've already started using them. So how do I backtrack out of that without, you know, seeming like a weirdo, you know?
Yeah.
It's a really, really complicated subject, which is why I'm very thankful that we can do these shows and these live streams to facilitate these conversations, because it's really important now that we get everyone's perspectives and we try to find the best way forward for everyone. We can only do that when we foster these kinds of conversations, you know? I
agree with that. We get a lot of people that throw hate from both directions, and that's not solving any problems for anyone. It's not. And I mean, you have people who are writing bills that are pretty awful towards kids and not supporting a natural ability for them to grow into who they're going to be. Which I wish Johnny would have had that opportunity for. you got doctors pushing it, you have schools pushing it, you have therapists pushing it. And I'm out here speaking on this a ton. There are good doctors. I have met some. There's great therapists out there. There are good school teachers. So when I generalize, I'm generalizing because I think it is a majority right now are struggling to do moral things. So I think it's something that needs talked about, but I don't want people to feel like, you know, I'm all one way. I'm so not. I think there are a lot of people out there who have good hearts and want to understand, like you're out here asking hard questions, right? And listening to people talk. It's because you want to understand, you want to know what's going on, and you want to know how we can help. And I feel like if we can get more people in the conversations like that, instead of throwing the hate back and forth, it's too late. It's all, this has been done. We just need to stop doing it to kids.
Right.
And then find a way to support the ones that it's happened to, whether they're still in it and it works for their life and people need to be respectful, or whether they got sick and this medicine affected them because they was on it long enough.
Yeah.
Because it's going to affect just about everybody who is on it for any length of time. And that's...
So I want to review just a little bit of Jonni's experience for people who may be joining for the first time. And if you are joining for the first time, welcome, and so happy that you're here. But Jonni, as you can tell, is overtly a gay young man. And it was very obvious to him and to his mom and to everybody around him. And he went to, on the advice of a friend, he went.
Well, I would love to interject real quick.
Yeah.
Just because I was so young, I don't think it was obvious to my mom. I got a lot of hatred from my surroundings because of the men in my household. They were not very accepting of how I carried myself. But I was young enough. I don't think, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, but just from our conversations, I don't think you had put two and two together quite that I was gay, because I also had the autism diagnosis. So you were being like, no, he's just confused.
He's just autistic. He doesn't understand.
Yeah. So you were 13 when you, just to bring people up to speed, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Jonni and Melissa. So you went to seek help, and to make a long story short, Melissa was told that if you were not allowed to transition, you very likely would commit self-deletion. And so basically you got on testosterone when you were 13.
No, estrogen.
Sorry, estrogen.
You're okay.
Gosh, my mind.
It's okay.
It's gone in 1,000 directions. You got, testosterone would have not done the trick.
No, that was like the whole opposite. Although a lot of people do get mixed up on that because, you know, when we're transitioned young, we all kind of end up looking and sounding the same in the end.
So the point of my long overview is that your body has been permanently, irreversibly harmed because of so many long years on estrogen. And it has affected what you assume is a lifelong sexual problem. And it has caused physical changes such as wider hips than would be normal for most guys. And breasts, and you have developed breasts. And so, I mean, these things are not reversible. So I really want people to get that out of their heads.
Right.
It's reversible. Now, maybe if you had been on it estrogen for a week or two, it wouldn't have had the impact, but you were on it for years.
8 years.
8 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Jonni
And
has gynecomastia from it. He has a chest, and he would have to go through the same surgery that all of the young ladies are talking about, the mastectomy, the double mastectomy, in order for him to have a flat chest again.
Because I'm so developed from going through my adolescence on it. So even like seeing even seeing like man boobs, like typical gynecomastia, mine are so much more developed. It's a different thing.
So,
and that is
that's the
just,
thing.
you know, the lawsuits need to keep coming. And thank God for Foxbarian and, you know, the others who are winning some of their lawsuits, because it's an uphill battle.
I'm glad other people are out there fighting for it too. A lot of people try to act like this is a one-off. You know, people will say, well, that's your experience. That's kind of what the doctors told me, is that this was rare. This is my child. It's a sales tactic. I have now found out that so many parents were told the exact same thing as me.
Yes.
Your child has a 60% chance of committing suicide. That's more than half. You know, do they have a supporting home? Because they can find one for them. You know, the brain thing, you know, well, when you were in the womb, your body didn't feed Jonni enough testosterone. So the body developed male, but the brain did not. And so these are things that doctors are saying as though this is 100%.
Yeah.
And then I find out that all these parents have been told the same thing, and not just in America.
Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
That is mind blowing.
Yeah. It's really, really, one of the things that went through my head again is the power of a narrative, the power of a cultural narrative. And I have mentioned before, I think, on the show that I grew up in the Deep South, Albany, Georgia, and Birmingham, in the midst of the civil rights movement. And my parents were outspoken opponents of segregation and racism. And it was such a powerful narrative that the people, the good folks of Albany, got it into their heads that if Black men were allowed to come into the library and go into the stacks, they would rape white women. And so what happened? Rather than saying, what are the odds that a Black man is going to rape a white woman in the stacks in a small library, and they shut the library down. They shut down the municipal swimming pools. They shut down the tennis courts. They shut down everything. And it was all because of a narrative
that someone painted because they didn't like someone.
Yeah. And people who knew better.
Yeah. It's a seed that's planted. You plant a seed and it grows, you know? Yeah. And especially when they try to push it, like when it's planted in schools and in medical system and in your CPS system and, you know, your court systems, they're all saying the same thing. So like when you find out that this isn't true and you don't know someone else, you question your own mind. So
yeah,
because everyone around you then thinks you're a bigot.
Yeah.
Right? So now I'm in an unsupporting home, not because I didn't love my kid, but because I wasn't following what everybody else was. And so anytime that maybe I thought a symptom or something could be the medicine, everyone around is like, absolutely not. You're just hateful. You're
Yeah.
just not supportive.
Yeah.
Which was the farthest thing from the truth. I mean, Jonni lived as Scarlett for a very long time. He
Yeah.
had, a high school life as Scarlett. His young work life for a few years was Scarlett through a couple
I came
different
into
jobs.
adulthood as Scarlett.
Yep. So it wasn't that I was unaccepting. It's that there was so many medical issues and people aren't coming to light with it because they're being told things that make them feel like it's their personal problem. Like, not that this is common and this happens all over,
Systemic.
but that this is individual to them. And some of it is so private, as you guys have heard Jonni talk about, very, very private stuff that I'm sure, because I've already spoken with other people who've had the same issues, that there are a lot of people out there that are having those issues and they're being shamed. So they're not out talking about them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I decided to start talking and helping Jonni get it out there. He's done a phenomenal job and I'm super proud of him. But people want to say that he's lying and he's not.
Yeah. We'll say anything pops into their
other
head.
People need to come forward, right? So I'm thinking I'm going to do a parents group for detransitioned kids because it's a very difficult thing as a parent. And I think more of them need to be able to talk about it. They need to be able to be comfortable saying, those doctors lied. And why did I believe them? Not just because they're the professionals, which they are, and they're sworn to do no harm, but also because if I question them, I have the schools and I have the therapists and I have the government bills that are trying to pass to support it. And I have the social media and the influencers and basically half the world.
Yeah.
And it's just mind blowing to me. So I just think I'm going to just come out and answer people's questions. Ask me whatever. But these are the facts. This is what's happening with minors. I'm not talking about adults also. Not that I have a side to weigh in on because people's personal lives aren't my business. Some women don't like their nose and they go get a nose job. So what everybody else does when they're adults is their business. I asked for there not to be surgeries till Jonni was an adult because it's adult decisions. And although wasn't informed enough on this medicine to understand, I was told it's a pause in time, which means these other parents are told that puberty blockers and this stuff is a pause in time, and it is not a pause in time.
No.
And I believe other parents were told this and now feel bad that they believe the doctor, right? Because now their kids are growing up. So I think that they need a space to talk, even if it's not publicly. I think I want to give that private space.
Yeah, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter and have my YouTube channel. If you're interested in this, just let me know and I'll pass it on to Melissa. And Jonni's very public too, so. Yeah,
and people can find me on social media. They're welcome to private message me on X or my Facebook or Instagram. It's okay. I'm going to ask that they not be mean. I know people are going to be mean, but I don't really care. I honestly do not care because there'll be someone who messages me that needs it, and I don't really care about the people who don't.
And I want to say, I have been so frustrated by the slamming of the door when I say, my thinking has changed. I used to think years ago when I published a book that trans was another form of gay or lesbian, and then the narrative just was spiraling out of control, saying that children are able to consent and things like that. And I decided to do a deep dive, and I have changed my thinking. And when I tell people I've started this podcast, and you know me, and you were there at my ordination and all of the things, you've written articles on me, please just listen to a few of the people on my podcast, and you will see that it's most of the people. I think you're the second person we've had on the show who has not been gay or lesbian.
Right.
So the idea that I've suddenly gone from officiating at the first same-sex wedding in Alabama to being an out and out homophobe, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. And if you've known me for 20 years, just watch my interview with Melissa Skinner and add on to that the interview with Jonni, and see if you cannot realize that you've been misled.
Right. Yeah. I think that people throw that word around too loosely now.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a way difference in a homophobe and someone who's questioning what they're doing to children. Way different. And I know because I grew up in a community that wasn't a real supportive group,
Right.
And when I say that, they're kind people. Like, I love the people I grew up with, but we just grew up in a different time, in a different area, and their beliefs are different.
Well, maybe you could talk about a little bit, like how people talked about me growing up, if you can remember, like how the men in our family bring up how I ran or how I walked, how I talked.
Yeah, I mean, he had
brother
for running like a girl and running like a fag, and just, things that in their mind, they weren't being harmful, but it's very harmful to a child.
Well, so or even, if I can interject, even years later, like when we went to play pool with Grandpa, do you remember? And they wouldn't even let me in.
Yeah. Todd, who I grew up with, was the bartender. And I've known him my whole life. And we were going to play pool in the town I grew up in. So we don't live there. I moved the kids away from there. Yeah. But we were going to play pool with my dad at the pool hall, which we don't do very often, just hadn't done it in years. And stopped in, and he said, "He can't be in here." I said, "I know you're not telling me that." And it got left alone but it was just the way our town is.
Yeah.
And where we grew up. So Johnny got to stay and play pool because you're not going to tell me or my dad that he can't. But they certainly tried, and was very nervous.
Who said, "Okay, I gotcha." And let me just interject. We have a good crowd, and please put your head in the door, meaning leave a comment, ask a question, or just say hello. And do that for us.
Yeah, I'm open for questions. I don't mind doing it on the fly. I'm fine with it. Do you have any other questions on? Like,
do I?
Throw a random question at me.
I don't. Well, I can throw a random question at you.
Darla has one.
Here you go. Darla's got one. What do I wish I had available to you when Jonni was 13? I wish I had a therapist. I wish that first visit when I went to a therapist, instead of telling me I had a 60% chance of my kid dying and congratulations, you can have a dead son or a living daughter. I wish I would have had a therapist that spent months talking to my kid.
Yeah.
That's what I wish I would have had.
And I'll second that for my side of the question. There's what they call gender exploratory therapy out there, where you can kind of explore like your expression and, you know, how you want to dress and stuff like that, but it doesn't entail any medicalization and or actual changes in, like, I guess, like, your identity. You don't take it on as an identity, but it encourages you to kind of explore your expression a little bit, you know, explore feelings around maybe being gay or being nonconforming and figuring out your sense of who you are. I wish I had a therapist that was around to support me through that and really explored, because given our Christian background that, or my Christian background that I kind of came up in, I was still putting together, and I was still very young. So I was still putting together that I might end up growing up to be gay. And I wish that a therapist had explored that more with me and helped me deal with the shame around that, rather than hiding it. And because they never talked to my mom about the feelings I expressed around being gay. They never brought it up to her. Instead, it was, nope, you got a daughter, you know,
Visit one.
while they were telling me that I would never be loved or accepted in that world.
Yeah.
So what they're telling, or at least in my experience, what my doctors told me behind closed doors was different than what they were telling my mother.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
so
good
I wish
point.
that I had a therapist that would have explored all of that with me, because maybe my life could have looked completely different if
Yeah.
I did have that.
I also, to add to that, I have a second wish. The first is I wish a therapist would have been a therapist and actually talked to him for a while and dug and found out why he felt that way, right? Second of all, I wish when we went to the church with this, that they didn't tell my 13-year-old son that you're going to burn in a lake of fire for eternity.
They said with Lucifer himself, they said that I was, for being gay, that was so bad, I was going to be literally with the devil in the lake of fire.
So I love my pastors. I love them as people. They have good hearts. I don't know what drives this. I guess just some people, when they read the scripture, read it differently.
Well, and they are putting.
So I trusted when my son says, I would like to call and talk to the pastor about this. I trusted a conversation for me not to be in, same as I did with the doctors. And that conversation led to my son was going to burn in a lake of fire. And I just don't think those are conversations to have with children.
No.
And, you know, I don't hold ill will at all. I mean, he's still my friend. But I do think that that's a conversation that needs to be had with people. Those aren't conversations you have with children. And it did make a deep enough effect, and it affects a lot of gay kids and a lot of trans kids, that I think it's important to talk about. God loves you.
Yeah, and
So
I have I once upon a time I would have theological pieces published in Patheos and places like that, and I did a piece on those passages. The fact is, those
they talk about men being with little boys,
but there people are taking passages that didn't mean then what people may think, and using the Bible not in any sort of holistic way. And I think that's a real shame.
right?
And
they use it in a shaming, ruling kind of way, and that's not
well,
what it's created for.
They're missing the forest for the trees,
Right.
which is that the government and God are two separate entities.
Right.
And God is the God of life and not of death. But the government is the God of death. So once you sort of get that in your head, it all starts to fall into place. And I wish people would because that's what has happened here. You've gotten federal judges and politicians and medical associations. I think if you keep in your mind that these clobber passages, these clobber passages, as they say, have done so much damage. And meanwhile, what we could use in a liberating way, we're it's like, the people who follow that logic are so much like WPATH and so much like politicians out there grifting. And if you just had a hermeneutics, as they say, of suspicion, where you're constantly calling into question politicians and medical associations and journalists and all of that. I didn't see what she said, but okay, Darla's going to try to get everybody back on screen, but it's fine with me if it's just Melissa. So you did say throw a random question at you, and this is something I have thought about. Yeah, you do got to love technology. Bless your heart, Darla. Darla doesn't get paid enough for this. We need to give her a raise, like double what we're paying her now, which of course is nothing. So I was on the path of, if somebody gets to be 18 or 24 or whatever, and they decide they want to transition, more power to them. But the more I think about it, it's not just a question of whether, more power to them, they're grown men and women, but the question is also doctors performing irreversible surgeries because adults
without them being fully informed.
And when there's nothing wrong with them.
Right.
When they don't have.
Right. What happened to the therapy that used to try to help us accept ourselves? Like, I'm not against any adult doing any of that, because like I said,
well, I think
one thing I used to tell Johnny at church, okay, because back when the doctors were pausing him in time, they were talking to him about surgeries, about brow bone, telling him to use Snapchat filters and Instagram to see what he wants to look like so that he can tell surgeons. So while I've got him on a pause in time, I'm trying to ease him into waiting, but we discuss some surgeries, and what it's like. And he's like, I don't want to have all these surgeries. And I'm thinking I got to keep him off the suicide train, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, one of the ladies at church, she had her lips done. She's beautiful. Another one had her nose done. One's got her eyebrows and her eyeliner tattooed on. So, like, to me, that's all cosmetic surgery, which any adult can do.
Well,
let me finish. So if adults want to do that, that's one thing, but it's permanent changes. And that's not something that a kid can consent to because they don't even understand. I mean, they're not allowed to drink. They're not allowed to drive. They're not allowed to go to war yet. They're not allowed to smoke cigarettes yet. They're not allowed to consent for sex, or not supposed to. I think this is going down a dangerous route to change that. If they can consent to sexual surgeries, then what else can they consent to? They can't consent to things they don't understand. Children don't understand. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, And I don't really care because they can't. I've worked with lots of kids.
Someone who was commenting on Callie Keeler, the wrestler, said she didn't consent to any of this.
Exactly.
She didn't consent to have this man, this big guy, get on top of her. She didn't consent to be in the ring or on the mat with a guy. She didn't consent to any of it.
Exactly.
Even if she did sign on a piece of paper that she would wrestle the people they told her to wrestle, she was not consenting to wrestling some guy.
Right.
Well, and that's what I wanted to touch on. A lot of this, especially when it comes to pediatric cases, does very much seem to be blurring the lines of consent because, you know, while in the beginning I was afraid of some of these surgeries, after you're using Snapchat filters and you're told your whole body is wrong and you need to look a certain way to be considered normal or to have a livable life, that induces what I now would interpret as body dysmorphia. They were inducing body dysmorphia in a child, in an adolescent, and then trying to sell me surgeries on top of that when my mom was not present in the room. So they blur the lines of consent in this area. Like, you know, even in regards to me having been started on this stuff, you know, is it consensual if they tell you your kid's gonna die and then they say, well, if you don't do this anyways, we're just gonna take your kid.
That's not consent. You've been blackmailed. By the way, our friend Warren is in the house and he says hi. Warren is our podcaster who told us what mics to buy.
Hi, Warren.
And he's a very special friend. His podcast is called Extra Bulla, and it's a really good podcast. He basically just sort of tells you the news with some commentary thrown in. But yeah, I mean, no, that's not consent.
Right.
It is not consent. Just as Al says, my husband, he says, you know, say these words or I'll shoot your dog. You know, no. So you say the words because you don't want somebody shooting your dog.
Right. Well, and that's how parents feel when they're told that their kids are going to die.
Yeah.
You know, if you tell somebody you're at a 60% chance that your kid's going to commit suicide unless you do this, and that you're lucky you brought them here today because you probably saved their life. You can have a living son or a living daughter or a dead son. I mean, that literally will break somebody's mind.
That's a Sophie's Choice. If you remember that movie where you had to choose one of your children going into a Nazi camp and the guards give her the choice between saving her daughter or saving her son. That's a Sophie's Choice where it's not a choice.
Right.
It's just
it's torture.
It's torture. Yeah.
So
man, I'm just so sorry y'all have been through this. It's just I don't know. I don't know where people's heads are.
Me neither. Me neither. And I'm dumbfounded that it's still happening because I see all these detransitioners, all these child survivors out here speaking and people being mean to them. And I'm like, holy cow. They have been through unbelievable damage mentally, emotionally, probably financially, and definitely physically that is permanent. And people want to be like, well, that could be your situation, but that's not everybody's. Oh my God, that shouldn't happen to one child.
Yeah.
What the hell?
One child. And when you think about the long-term consequences that both of you are facing, you with your sense of guilt and Jonni with his permanent bodily changes and the long-term effects, and
that I now realize we don't know the long-term effects because nothing they said was the truth. So what are the long-term effects?
Well, some of these girls are getting these double mastectomies, and then they're having these medical complications.
Yeah.
And
yeah, girls and boys are having medical complications
girls
right
and
now.
boys with these surgeries and hormones and puberty blockers, that it's setting them up, as other people have said, to be lifelong medical patients.
Yes.
So who is the beneficiary of
Right.
all?
And somebody said to me one day, they said, well, they're not lifelong medical patients. And I said, are you on medication? Can you ever come off of it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you're a lifelong medical patient. And I hope that you don't have the side effects Jonni has went through, but you've been on it a couple years. You've not been on it 8 to 10 years yet. So unfortunately, just give it some time.
Yeah, well, that's something a lot of people forget too. I was on it for almost 8 years, so really, I'm an elder to a lot of people in that space, even though I might not be chronologically. When it comes to hormones and transition, I'm most definitely am a trans elder, even as a detransitioner. Well, and there's side effects when you go off of these meds too. Like, I mean, I'm growing lumps in my bones, and a lot of people don't want to believe it, but like my mom here, which you can talk about that a little bit if you'd like, Mom.
I would.
I mean, it's been horrific, and you're right. Doctors don't really want to see it. I've had a few, which we won't name, but like the ones at the hospital that was in the town that we used to, not the town that we grew up in, but the town that we moved from before we moved out here recently. Those doctors were the ones that told me to go off the meds, and they were documenting some of my stuff, but they're just at a loss for words because they still have a gender clinic in that hospital. So what do you do?
Right. And he does have a very nice doctor there, and she did own that, she doesn't know if it could be the medicine. But I went through hospital after doctor's office, after hospital, after referral to universities before I got to her.
Let me ask you all this. There have been a couple of judgments, like at Texas Children's Hospital and the Cleveland Clinic, where they have been court mandated to set up a detransitioning clinic. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what it is they can actually do. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it would depend on how long the person has been
on stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that it's.
I think it's good because they need to start figuring out how to take care of these kids, what some of this medicine has caused. So unfortunately, I'm not a medical professional, or we wouldn't be in this position right now.
Yeah.
But I think all they can do is kind of study and watch and try to help them manage the side effects and learn what happens to the body after you've been through this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I agree with that. They're going to have to start tracking these kids, and, they're going to have to figure out both the long-term effects from the medication itself, and then what's going to happen to their bodies when they stop it. I mean, as I had said earlier, I'm growing like lumps in my bones. Which, do you have something to jump in on there, Mom?
When you're done, I'm going to explain that process. So when Jonni came off the medicine, once we seen, so the doctor suggested in December of 23 that Jonni maybe take a break from the meds because we couldn't figure out what was going wrong with him, right? And so he kind of agreed, but I mean, he'd been on this road a really long time, right? So he was kind of on and off the meds for about 3 months. And in March of 24, we seen WPATH files get released and realized they've been teaching doctors to push this. So then he quit cold turkey. And easily within a month, he started getting a lump on his foot. And it was so painful and hot and red that I didn't know what it was. So I took him to the emergency room, and it was kind of soft and you could push it, right? And they said, oh, he must have bumped it on something. I said, I watched it grow like in the last 2 days, and it's hot and it's gotten big. They said, come back if it doesn't go away in a week or two. So in about 3 weeks, it got hard. And we went back, and then they got us a doctor's appointment. And then by the time we got in to see them, they x-rayed it and said, it's his natural bone skeleton. I'm like, I watched that sucker grow. So by then he started getting one on his chest. So he's got one right here, but it didn't come up like the same on his foot. Like it came up the same in a little knot, but instead of continuing to grow like a golf ball size, he has a second ankle on his foot. It's that big. It's like half a golf ball. Okay. It bothers him. His shoe don't fit right. And they're like, nah, that's your skeleton. No, it's not. And then this one started growing. It started spidering out kind of flat across the top of his chest. So it's a little bit higher over here than over here. And crickets. Then he started getting lumps in his lymph nodes, right?
Oh, goodness.
So they x-rayed those or did a, what do you call the scan? Ultrasound on those. And all of a sudden it was a panic that they made, and it's different than the one on his bones, but we need a biopsy of this one, like right now, like it may be something. It's 4-point-something millimeters. So it was good size for something in a lymph node in your throat. Then they couldn't do the biopsy because it's too close to an artery.
Oh.
And now all of a sudden, none of that stuff matters anymore.
The lymph node was right behind my jugular. So how they do it is they have like a needle that shoots out and takes the biopsy real quick. So the risk was far too high that this would pierce my jugular.
Yeah.
And they couldn't
so we didn't do the biopsy, right? And then they watched them and they slowly shrunk. So these knots that grow on his bones, he's got one right now starting on the back of his head right here. They seem to be in like breaks and bends of the bone, like in joints. I don't know what it is, but I do know that they stunted his growth with the blocker because they predicted him to be 6'2" to 6'3" like his dad, and he's 5'8". So they purposely blocked his growth plates from growing. Whatever they do to make him not grow anymore. I think when he got off the meds that it's trying to feed it again and it's growing bone in places, but I can't prove that. And I'm not a medical person. It's just fucking common sense because nobody in a year has been able to say anything. So then he started growing one in his wrist and it was hurting. They did think they find something there. A ganglion cyst, they said. And they were going to remove it. But now they're still putting she in his medical records, and he's been off of this stuff for a long time, and he's telling them he's off of it because he thinks the medicine is doing something. So now do you go under for surgery when you don't know that they're listening, that you were on any of these hormones, and you don't know if that medicine is going to affect going under? And how do you have this conversation with someone who doesn't want to have the conversation?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I do want to just note as well, the ganglion cyst, since I still have it, it's like a soft spot. So that pushes in, whereas the lumps in my bones don't. And they did x-ray those, and it is a solid bone. Just for anyone that might listen, that might have gotten
right. So it's just all three of the things were happening at once shortly after he quit the medicine. The bone growths, the things that grew in his lymph nodes, which the body ended up absorbing. As far as I know, they were shrinking last time they checked, and then they just quit checking, like us asking is, what's the word when you think too many things are wrong? medically hypochondriac, right? That's kind of how they treat you. And it's like, but none of these things should be happening to the body.
Yeah.
You know,
especially at 21, which
You know?
is how young I was when I stopped. I was 21.
so it's just mind blowing to me. So I think a detransition hospital, or just any hospital or doctor that will genuinely listen to kids or survivors or young people or whoever this happened to, and look into it genuinely.
Yeah.
It's
Look at-
okay to say, you know what, this is new. I'm really not sure. Let's find out together.
Yeah.
Instead of acting like it's not happening.
Yeah.
Because it's not just my kid. They're all over the world. So stop it.
Yes, I agree. We agreed to keep Melissa for an hour, so I think we've kept you an hour, and so we are going to thank you once again. Come by anytime you have anything you want to talk about or report, or just bring us up to date. We will always be happy to see you. Obviously, Jonni will, and I will too. I'm so glad we've gotten to do this.
Thank
And
you.
do stay in touch with me. And yeah, and anybody who's interested in a parent of a parent who has gone through this.
Really, anyone that has a question, but ideally, I'm going to work on a parents group for parents of detransitioners.
That will be awesome. Okay, we're going to remove you from the stage. You are welcome to hang around in the green room, as it were. Well, Jonni and I talk about you.
Okay, well, I hope it's good, y'all.
No, but it's that thing we do, so we're going to do it. So, goodbye, and
Goodbye. Thank you.
Stay in touch.
Thanks,
All right.
Mommy.
Yep.
There she goes. And Darla said, thank you, Melissa. So it's a little awkward for you and me now to sort of deconstruct what we've heard, because none of it's new to you. And she is mother, and she still is in the green room, I think. So, but I mean, is there something you want to emphasize again for people who may be going through this, or contemplating going through this, or just what thoughts do you have? Where do we go?
It's really difficult for me to give thoughts in regards to like parents that might be considering going through this. I have a lot of thoughts that I could give young people who are considering it, but that is such a complex issue. I feel like that could be a whole episode unto itself, only because we would have to go into like, you know, their social upbringings, the environments that they came up in. It's a whole thing. You know, I'm really glad that she was willing to come on and have this conversation with us, because it is really difficult as a parent, you know, because in a way they do consent to these things happening, but in a way they don't as well, because, you know, my mom was threatened that I might commit suicide. Then she was told that I had a brain in the wrong body. And then her custody was threatened by, you know, some very powerful people. My doctors were not just some Joe Schmo doctor. They were very prestigious doctors at a very prestigious hospital in my state. So, you know, in that scenario, it's almost like you can't say no. Otherwise you lose your kid. And then God knows what kind of, you know, things I could have gone through. I could have had all kinds of surgery by now and have just not been in her custody. And, you know, Lord knows what my life could have looked like. So I am very grateful.
When we see what's going on with like Alexandra, who was on our show, I mean, the state of California took her child away from her when, and this is not, that was not a one-off either. But I can say, as a parent myself, that feeling guilty, and I can't imagine there are parents out there who don't feel guilty about decisions they made having to do with their kids. And then when things go wrong, like when Leanna was killed, I think I've mentioned that Al blamed himself and he had absolutely nothing to do with it, but he said, I never did trust Tad's car, which is, I won't go into all of that story, but that's we are known for being guilty and for or for feeling it, even when it's not warranted. That's just how we operate. And the reason I wanted to say that is I do know kids who have, not necessarily kids, but some kids, some young people who have gone through transition, and I wouldn't for the life of me want to make the mothers of those kids feel bad, because I know enough about their home situation to know that they had their plates full too. And we do the best we can with the information we have. So that's my point, is I don't want anyone listening to think I'm saying anything negative about a parent. Of course, there are abusive and neglectful parents out there, but I don't know them.
Yeah, we don't hold negative views towards the parents on the show. The parents have been given really an impossible choice to make, if you can even really call it a choice. It's a very it's just a tragic medical scandal, really. That's really all this episode showcases, is it's just like validating my story, essentially, and how atrocious this medical scandal, really is.
It's a medical scandal, and I will maintain to the end that it's a journalistic scandal as well, because as a historian or a journalist, you don't just accept the narrative, you inquire, you investigate it. You don't just repeat the things you've heard without looking into it. And and then we look at what happened in Sweden, in the country where people have good sense. They've made it impossible for a woman who's a specialist to speak. What the Sam Hill is going on?
Well, and that's the another thing that I wanted to bring up. There's a lot of journalists out there who do want to just I always say both sides, but I want to emphasize that this is not a two-side issue. This is, a scandal where a lot of people's rights are being violated in very complex ways. So this is not an issue where there's one side versus the other. It bugs me very deeply when people boil it down or simplify it into, well, it's just, one side for it versus against it. Well, it's way more complex than that.
No, there are not two sides of every issue.
There are lots of journalists that have tried to cover, stories like mine and such that are hindered, either be it by a higher up or they let their own personal opinions and feelings on the subject dictate what stories that they're willing to cover and put out there. It's not everybody, certainly, but that is very much, a thing regarding this medical scandal, where it should just be, plain as day that this is a scandal. We should be allowed to cover all sides of it. That nuance is going to be the only way we can maybe find a solution to these problems. And if we have people being demiked, as is happening in Sweden, or we have journalists that aren't willing to cover these horrific situations, then we will never come to a deeper understanding of the subject in general. So,
and that's where independent podcasts and independent journalism can come in when it's done well and not all independent podcasters even really care to do it well. But I mean, because there's nothing that constrains me, which is I've been able to do the things I have done all my adult life because I didn't have to answer to anybody. I pay the price. I do pay the price, but nobody's threatening to take my kids from me or lose my job, lose my income, lose, the ability to put food on the table. So that's one reason I feel like, because I have got so many privileges that if I don't, people say often, and even Al will say, why do you keep doing this? When people are so mean to you, I'm like, well, if I don't, who will?
Yeah.
Besides, I like Jonni. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. We're just speaking truth to power, because, I would be lying if I didn't say there weren't costs to me being out there speaking.
Of course.
And about some of my most personal business, like my sexual function,
That's just amazing to me that you will talk about that.
Well, somebody
amazing.
Somebody
has to.
And, my thing is somebody has to, and I'm going to struggle with this. If I potentially, most likely I'm being told for the rest of my life, there will be issues. But even if there aren't for the rest of my life, my young adulthood, because I'm 23 now, so my young adulthood and adolescence, I certainly spent struggling with that. And that is, just as important. You can't be doing that to people. Can't be.
No.
And I know I'm not the only one, because despite how people will try to boil down and politicize this issue, I have so many friends that are in this situation, both that are detransitioners, that are still transitioning, that transitioned as children, that did so as adults, that some of them are, not trans and went on puberty blockers for other reasons, and still have some of the same issues, So this is not just like I guess that's the point that I want to emphasize, which I feel like would tie into my mother's point earlier as we were beginning the show, that this is not just a two-side issue. This is a human rights issue. And those sometimes they do boil down to black and white, but not often.
There are a lot of issues that don't have two sides. I mean, who's going to say, well, there are two sides to slavery. No,
right.
There wasn't. No.
It's a complex.
Which doesn't mean that everybody who owned a slave, there's a whole thing, but no, they're not two sides to it. And they're not two sides to a pastor telling a vulnerable young boy that he's going to burn in hell. I get that was his, but no, they're not. And somebody sent me something the other day. It said, with you and your podcast, I really liked this piece because it shows two sides of the issue. And I'm like, and you really want me to read this?
Yeah, it's very complex. even in regards to Christianity, being a minister, there's so many different, how do you say, like denominations or like sects of Christianity. And, some of them are great. Some of them are wonderful. Some of them are very focused on like spiritual warfare and the demonic and, all of that.
I have to say that my Christianity is, for one thing, I grew up on being opposed to my culture, my country, and my church. But that didn't mean, my mother had a point of view that Jesus was about freedom. So the segregation on that made her so angry. That's neither here nor there. In terms of my theology, I've been influenced by the liberationists coming out of Latin America. There's nobody that I know of in this country, I don't care how good they are, who's getting to the heart of it and who has any real influence on me. So, but I've seen the liberationists out of Latin America have been instrumental in toppling dictatorships. And there was one that I just loved so much. He got into the archives in Brazil and Xeroxed the entire record of who the military captured, who they tortured, where they tortured them. He did that at great personal risk, and that's where I am. Mm-hmm. Always willing to talk about it, but I won't do it now.
Okay. It's helpful information, because a lot of these issues, these like massive scandals or human rights issues, even if they aren't exactly the same, we can study them and still see commonalities. So
absolutely. To me, it's like, I don't understand why everybody's not connecting the dots. We don't have the kind of medical care in this country that other countries do. We don't have schools that are teaching kids to be critical thinkers or even to read, and we need to be connecting these dots and say there's something bad wrong here.
Yep. I agree very much. That's why
and quit making enemies of everybody.
Yes.
Not everybody's a racist. Not everybody's a homophobe. Not everybody. Huh?
I said, or a transphobe.
Or a transphobe. Not everybody is. And we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. Mm-hmm. When we say, I can't like Buck Angel, even though he's great on this issue, because I disagree with him on something else. Why would I do that? Do I actually want to win this fight, or do I just want to have, access the moral high ground and keep it?
Well, and it takes away a major part of the human experience, which is arriving at disagreements with people. I can't tell you how many times I've had a disagreement with someone where we were actually able to discuss it, and I'll walk away learning something new, even if I don't change my mind, which I have changed my mind a lot on, different subjects, not in regards to, this specific pediatric transition subject, but in general. Yeah. I've learned so many things from having discussions with people that I disagreed with. And I hope as more of these like conversations happen, as we can have more of these nuanced conversations, that more people will start to see the light, as it were, and mm-hmm. come out of this major divide, because all it's serving to do is cutting them off from other people.
Yeah. So I think that has probably been our 20-minute debrief. Mm-hmm. And so it's probably time for us to say good night to everybody. Oh, wait, we've got a comment. Oh, Grant is back. Well, that's nice. He was here last week.
Yeah, hi, Grant.
He's a gay guy with 4 children and married, and we've been friends forever. He says, second episode tuning in. Thanks for sharing, Jonni. Do you think the doctors who treated you are bad people whose intentions were malicious? You've probably answered, but I'm new here. Hey, Grant.
Yeah. That's a good question, Grant. And I would recommend looking up my story, because I have spoken vaguely on this in the past, and I have to actually be careful with what I say, because these are not safe people. And we can't ever look into someone's heart and say, well, they had bad intentions or good intentions, because I can't look into their mind and say whether or not. However, They did threaten my mom's custody if she didn't comply. They did tell me one thing behind closed doors, that I would never be accepted for being gay because of my effeminacy. They thought I would live a better, more normal life as a woman. And they did not talk to my mom about that. And when I finally got my medical records, they were all falsified. They made up a whole backstory for me. So I would recommend, if you're interested in learning more about that, looking up my story, where I can go more in depth, where I go more in depth for a longer period, because we're about to end the stream. And I would let you draw your own conclusions there, because ultimately, they're not safe people, and I have to be careful with, ascribing intentions to people. So
I'm so pleased that you came back, Grant. And we have talked a couple of times on the phone. And Grant is like, he's one of mine. I love him dearly. Him and his husband and their 4 kids. They are good folks. They've taken in some kids who really needed a place to be.
that's awesome.
It is. And I do want to say that Melissa put in the chat, her answer is yes, they were malicious.
Okay. So my mom says yes. She said, I asked the doctor, because my doctor was gay, if Jonni could be gay, and he said no. His brain is different, and gay guys know that they are men. And I will take that further. He and the gender therapist did tell me that gay men only like masculine men, and given the way that I talk, the way that I walk, the way that I wanted to present myself, I would never be loved or accepted in that community. And if I wanted to find love or find a husband or have any kind of a normal life, I needed to transition to blend in, because I wouldn't be accepted in that world. So I'm trying to be very careful, but my mom will just straight up say that, yeah, she feels like they were malicious.
Yeah. Grant is a gentleman. He's a very, very sweet guy. Yeah. So anyway, I guess we're going to wrap it up, unless Grant has something else he wants to ask or say, or somebody else does. I hope Beth was able to find us. She didn't put her head in, but
okay. If not, I mean, we post the recorded version, so.
Oh yeah. You can find all of our chats recorded for posterity on YouTube. So we are going to let everyone go. Grant, are you just...
He just said he's good. Thank you.
He's good. Okay, we'll talk soon. I got to get you and your kids out here to the farm and play with the horses and stuff. But so I love you, Grant, and thanks for coming back. It's so good to be able to talk with Melissa, and I so appreciate Jen Specht for lending you to us, and Warren for giving us a good suggestion on a mic, and for all the good things that are happening. So we're going to let you go. Do you have anything else? There we go. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Darla. So that's a wrap. All right, I'm going to end the stream.